Hey YouTube, how's it going? I'm back, and today I wanted to talk about and do our very first 1/12 scale Mythic Legions action figure review. And I thought, what better way to start it off with one of this figure line's quote grail pieces. This is Otho from the Mythic Legions very first wave of figures ever produced back in 2015, 2016, something like that. Interestingly enough, when this figure first came out, and this happens all across collecting, it wasn't a very popular figure. Folks weren't too keen on picking it up. However, as time progressed, it eventually sold out. The Four Horsemen, who are the people that create and come out and envision this awesome figure line, have previously said that they're not going to do a reissue of him necessarily. They might do a version 2. But, so folks started charging more money for it and paying more money to get it. And now this figure, which originally retailed at $35 or so, is going for a 300 plus in some cases. It's just crazy. However, I was lucky enough to track one of these down for what I thought was a pretty fair value, thanks to some help from the awesome Mythic Legions collecting community, Mythic Legions Cabal on Facebook. So I'm happy to say that I now have an Otho, and that's what we're going to start this entire reviews 1/12 Mythic Legions reviews off on. I think it's a pretty good foot. So, first of all, let's talk about Mythic Legions. As most people know who are into the line or flirting with getting into the line, it is a completely modular 1/12 scale fantasy action figure line, which is really cool and a lot of fun, just as you will customize your characters before you play an RPG video game, or just how you'll build your character from scratch in order to start your D&D campaign. You can do that with these Mythic Legions figures. And I've already kind of done a bit of that with Otho here. Now let's get into it. So I'm going to take him off the rotating display, turn that off real quick. Otho comes with a pretty standard Mythic Legions 1.0 knight body. So if you look here, you can see he's got the plate mail going all throughout his arms, his body, and the cloth here, the tabard, to just kind of cover it. Now, it's kind of implied from his sculpt and design that he does have some plate mail underneath that cloth. The body itself is honestly exactly the same as the Templars, of which I have a couple and I will be looking at in the future. Otho comes with these two swords here, which are your pretty standard. You have this big two-handed sword, which comes out in a leaf cut like this, as well as a smaller one-handed sword. They both have the blue handle and the black steel sort of blade, which I like well enough. You've seen these swords a ton of times, depending on how many legions you bought, because they were some of the OG weapons to come with the line. He also comes with an axe, and this is not his axe, this is Vorgus Vermilius's axe. But they're pretty much the exact same thing, only Otho's would have blue instead of red, and this is just the first axe that I got. So I prefer to display him with his two swords. In the comic book that came out, I think he was using an axe, but then in a lot of promotional material, Otho was actually dual wielding swords. He had this big two-handed one and this little single-handed one. And because this line is based so much more in fantasy than any sort of medieval realism. I know that the Four Horsemen draw their designs from realistic medieval armors, but because it's very much so a fantasy line, I do prefer to go with just the fantasy archetype of dual wielding swords, because it's not something that can really exist anywhere else in my figure collection, which has a whole lot more realistic kind of stuff in it. Now, you'll see here that I actually custom made this leather sword holder hoops for Otho. The Mythic Legions figures, let me pull some of those out. I hope that's not too loud on camera. Me rummaging through my Legions bag. Here we go. So Mythic Legions does have their own little rubber sword holder hoops, and you can strap these over the shoulder, or you can strap them around the waist. They have two sizes of these, this large one and the smaller ones. The smaller ones are better for going around the waist, and the larger ones are better for going around the shoulder. That said, I wanted to make my own that had 2 hoops on it instead of 1, or 3 hoops on mine, actually. So I just got some old leather strips and popped them out. But let's talk about the modularity of these figures before we get into articulation, I think. So all of these figures, you can pop off the head right here. You'll see that goes in. And this is actually not one of Otho's pieces, so I'm going to pop that off also. And there we go. If you can see the holes in there, like that. And I could now stick on any head sculpt set from a 1.0 figure that I really wanted. Now, I don't have any spares in my kit right now, so I'm not going to, but you can also pop out the that was a little bit harder to do, but the arms pop clean out. Ta-da. You can do that with them. Let me shove that back in. There we go. You can pop the waist off like that. So maybe I wanted to build a completely customized figure. I have this blank male torso. Just pop that onto the ball joint and voila. Now I've got this sort of a setup. Or you can just pop that right back on like so. So it's completely modular. I could even remove the arms at the elbows, and I could remove the forearms from the lower arm. I could remove the hands. I can really do just about whatever I want with this figure, which does make it a whole lot of fun. And while I'm on the subject of modding, what I did with Otho here, because I really like the Four Horsemen designs and the designs of most of these characters, and I'm not super into the army building aspect yet, so I just did something super subtle. This is the collar piece that Otho actually comes with. You can see it's a lot bigger than the one that I had with him. And you know, I liked it. However, when I was going for articulation, the beard kept smudging in the inside of the collar, and I didn't really like that. So I took a Templar figure that I had, knowing that it would work because this is the same exact buck as the Templar builders. And I just borrowed one of their smaller collars because Otho did not come with a smaller collar. And voila! This is how I like my Otho to look in my collection. So it's awesome that we even have the option to do that. Alternatively, if you want even more armor, you can stick these big pauldrons on Otho. He comes with 2, one on each side. And if you notice, while he was on the rotating display base, he has these holes in his back. All you have to do for that is smush those in there. And you can see now just how much more armored Otho is in comparison. This does hinder articulation, and I have some figures that I keep, you know, with those big, huge pauldrons in, and I have some that I don't. To me, Otho is a warrior, but based on his lore from the short comic book that popped out, he's also kind of doing some traveling and doing some adventuring. So I thought I wouldn't opt for the heaviest armor I could put him in this time. Now also, you'll see he has this little pouch back there, sort of to go along with the idea of him traveling, him adventuring. I just folded up some fabric, tied a knot in top, and stuck it in another belt loop so that he could have this little bag. Maybe it has a ration in it, maybe it has some coins so that he could pay for a spot to sleep at night. Who knows? It's whatever you want, kind of. So I did that, and it's just awesome that the design of these figures lend themselves to such easy customizability. Let's go into articulation real quick. This articulation will be the exact same as every single figure line or figure in this line, basically, that uses this body. So the Templars, other knights, some evil knights, it's really only going to be a little bit different in the event that you find a figure that's a 1.0 with a different buck. So there's the barbarian buck, the orc buck, which are the same thing, and those will have a little bit different of articulation. The scheme is going to be the same though. So this is on a ball in there and a hinge. So you can get a decent amount of shoulders going up, turning all the way around like that, going down, what have you. That's what you got. This is the same idea, but in the elbow. So you get almost 90 degrees. And in fact, you can take these elbow pad part off. You can slide those off, and you can get a bit more out of his articulation if you wanted to, but I'm not going to do that. And that swivels all the way around. As you saw maybe when I was showing off how modular it was, Otho's on just a ball joint in his waist, like that. Shove that back on. There. So that allows for a pretty good amount of torso articulation. The hips on these guys are awesome. All of the rubber armor and, in his case, this little flap here, do not really impede articulation. Otho can kick forward like that. He gets about 90 degrees in his knees. And there's a rotation swivel cut up there in the thigh, as well as this knee. Oh, there we go. Rotating at the bottom right there. The hips can go out completely into a splits. That's great. Also not necessary. He's in full plate armor. Otho would not be doing that. And the ankles are awesome. They are on this little hinge and swivel too, but the angle that the swivel goes into the foot, instead of going straight down, they had it go forward, which allows for an awesome range of ankle pivot. So let's get Otho kitted up here real quick for battle off camera. You can really get these guys into some good poses once you learn how to work with their articulation scheme. So let me get Otho into something resembling a sword using pose. All right. Get that head sculpt tight in there. And boom. Something just quick like this. And it was pretty easy to do. It looks like Otho just stabbed straight down with that sword. Whoosh. And that's what he's about. So that really does it for articulation on this guy and many other Mythic Legions figures. Now I want to talk about why I'm all about this awesome figure in particular. The sculpt for the armor, the body, like I said, is exactly the same as so many other figures in this line. So it's the paint and that head sculpt that really do it. Look at this head sculpt with that awesome big bushy beard, those sick dreads that get pulled back into that bun and wrap there. This is a unique head sculpt in any figure line. We haven't really seen a lot of looks like this. So yeah, it's great. The head sculpt is admittedly a little bit big for the body, but man, it's dope. This guy just looks like a big, badass, fantasy warrior, which is what I'm all about coming into this line from an interest in D&D. So, yeah, wowzers. Going into the armor here, it's all that nice silvery steel gray, which I like. But then you have the gold trim over the bronze accents in there. The chainmail sort of texturing in there is all painted gold. So that's nice too. Coming down here, they really did manage to put in a lot of detail into such a small figure. And that's where you really start to notice that these are specialty figures, and not something that you're going to find on your trip to Walmart, like Star Wars Black Series from Hasbro or something like that. They're much more akin to, here in the United States, imported figures, you know, that you have to buy on specialty online retailers, you know, and other just cool stuff like that. They're harder to find. In fact, the way that you usually get on these figures early as possible is through a Kickstarter. This line actually holds the record for, I think, the most well-funded Kickstarter action figure line to date. And that's usually how you order them, unless you wait for them to come out on Big Bad Toy Store or Maletta, something like that, Mallfish Collectibles, places like that. They will carry these at retail, but for a little bit uptick in the value. I think your basic figure is going to be $50. Your builders are going to be $40, and your deluxe figures are going to be 70 or 80, something more like that. But if you pre-order these before they come out, you get your basic figures like this for around $35, $40, I think, and you get your Legion builders for like $30. So you save a bit of money if you drop it all at once and actually support them directly through their crowdfunding. That said, I've only supported a crowdfunder a couple of times, and I'm glad that I did it. But going up here in the future, after this Alithia wave, that's going to be the last wave that I order through another retailer. I'm all in for their crowdfunding right now. And in fact, I just dropped a bit on their War of the Aetherblade campaign funding that they just came out with. They're making a video game, a tactics phone game to go along with the figure line, which I think is great. So yeah, I got in on that. And in order to help fund it, they released some awesome deluxe builder sets for $54 a piece. You got a male and female orc, and we'll talk about those when they come in, obviously. But yeah, so that's basically it for Otho here. This is a bit of a longer review for a 1/12 scale figure, but it's also my introduction to the line in general on this channel, so there's a lot to really go over. And I hope that I've done it justice. I'm going to get Otho back into his more relaxed stance now, because he's going to go back up on the shelf. Ta-da! And there we go. If you're into this line or you're thinking about getting into it, I do strongly suggest that you head on to Facebook, if you have a Facebook, and join the Mythic Legions Cabal. There's just a ton of cool dudes, good collectors, and folks from the Four Horsemen Productions, Four Horsemen Design themselves in there. And it's a great place to hang out and talk to other collectors. Like I said, it's positive. There's not a lot of toxic collecting in there, not a lot of negativity, as there is in just about every other figure group that I've been in. I've been in some great groups, but there's always those people that just, they're a little over the top and they tend to bring things down. That doesn't really exist as much in Cabal. So, anyways, if you're into this line, join that Facebook group, talk to some of the cool people in there. They can get you some leads on some grails too, because it's hard to hop into this line. Sold out stuff that's really cool goes for a ton of money on the aftermarket. But if you know where to look, if you know who to talk to, you can get the hookup every now and again. So it's worth a shot. Anyways, guys, I'm going to sign off now. Stay happy, stay healthy, and keep on collecting. Bye-bye.